Pork consumption is strictly prohibited in Islam, a dietary law that is well known even outside the Muslim community. This prohibition is not just a matter of religious observance, but encompasses a broader spectrum of spiritual, ethical, and health-related considerations. The basis for this prohibition is rooted in the Quran and Hadith, the primary sources of Islamic teachings, which offer comprehensive guidelines for the lifestyle of a Muslim. This script aims to explore the multifaceted reasons behind this dietary restriction, delving into religious texts, historical context, health implications, and ethical considerations, providing a thorough understanding of why pork is forbidden in Islam. The prohibition against pork in Islam is deeply rooted in its religious texts, primarily the Quran and Hadith. To fully understand this prohibition, it is essential to delve into these texts and the context in which they were revealed. The Quran, the holy book of Islam, is considered the direct word of God as revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. It serves as the ultimate source of guidance for Muslims in all aspects of life, including dietary laws. The Hadith, on the other hand, are collections of the sayings, actions, and approvals of the Prophet Muhammad, providing further clarification and context to the Quranic revelations. The prohibition of pork is explicitly mentioned in the Quran in several verses, emphasizing its importance and clarity. One of the most cited verses is found in Surah Al-Baqarah 2:173, where Allah states, "He has only forbidden to you dead animals, blood, the flesh of swine, and that which has been dedicated to other than Allah. But whoever is forced by necessity, neither desiring it nor transgressing its limit, there is no sin upon him. Indeed, Allah is forgiving and merciful." This verse not only prohibits the consumption of pork, but also highlights the mercy and forgiveness of Allah for those who are compelled by necessity, indicating that the prohibition is not meant to be an undue hardship, but a guideline for purity and health. Another significant verse is found in Surah Al-Ma'idah 5.3. "Prohibited to you are dead animals, blood, the flesh of swine, and that which has been dedicated to other than Allah, and those animals killed by strangling or by a violent blow or by a headlong fall or by the goring of horns, and those from which a wild animal has eaten, except what you are able to slaughter before its death, and those which are sacrificed on stone altars, and prohibited is that you seek decision through divining arrows. That is grave disobedience." This verse reiterates the prohibition of pork, placing it among other prohibited practices that were prevalent in pre-Islamic Arabia. The detailed enumeration of forbidden items underscores the comprehensive nature of Islamic dietary laws, which aim to ensure that what Muslims consume is pure, wholesome, and in accordance with divine commandments. The Hadith literature provides additional insights into the prohibition of pork and the broader context of Islamic dietary laws. One such hadith is narrated by Abu Huraira, a close companion of the Prophet Muhammad, who reported that the Prophet said, "Allah forbids you to eat the meat of swine, whether it is the fat or the flesh." This hadith reinforces the Quranic prohibition and clarifies that all parts of the pig are considered impure and forbidden. The consistent emphasis in both the Quran and Hadith reflects the seriousness with which this prohibition is regarded in Islam. The religious basis for the prohibition of pork is also linked to the concept of tahara, or purity, which is a fundamental principle in Islam. Muslims are required to maintain both physical and spiritual cleanliness, and the consumption of pork is seen as incompatible with this principle. The pig is considered an impure animal, and its flesh is believed to contaminate the body and soul. This view is not unique to Islam. Similar prohibitions are found in Judaism, indicating a shared understanding of the pig's impurity in Abrahamic religions. Furthermore, the prohibition of pork in Islam is part of a broader framework of dietary laws known as halal, permissible, and haram, forbidden. These laws are designed to ensure that Muslims consume food and drink that are beneficial to their health and well-being, and that their consumption practices reflect their obedience to God's will. The Quran states in Surah Al-An'am 6:145, say, "I do not find within that which was revealed to me anything forbidden to one who would eat it unless it be a dead animal, or blood spilled out, or the flesh of swine. For indeed it is impure, or it be that slaughtered in disobedience, dedicated to other than Allah. But whoever is forced by necessity, neither desiring it nor transgressing, then indeed your Lord is forgiving and merciful." This verse not only reiterates the prohibition but also provides a rationale by describing the flesh of swine as impure. The use of the term rijs, which translates to impurity or abomination, underscores the strong aversion to pork in Islamic teachings. The concept of impurity here is both physical and spiritual, reflecting the comprehensive nature of Islamic law, which governs both the material and immaterial aspects of life. In addition to the textual evidence, the prohibition of pork is also supported by the practice and consensus of the Muslim community, known as ijma. The early Muslim scholars and jurists unanimously agreed on the prohibition of pork, and this consensus has been maintained throughout Islamic history. The uniformity of this practice across diverse Muslim cultures and societies highlights the centrality of this prohibition in Islamic law. The religious foundation for the prohibition of pork in Islam is thus deeply rooted in the Quran, reinforced by the Hadith, and supported by the consensus of the Muslim community. This comprehensive approach ensures that the prohibition is understood not only as a dietary restriction, but as an integral part of a broader spiritual and ethical framework. The emphasis on purity, obedience to divine commandments, and the well-being of the individual and community reflects the holistic nature of Islamic teachings, which seek to harmonize the physical and spiritual dimensions of human life. The historical context surrounding the prohibition of pork in Islam provides valuable insights into the rationale behind this dietary restriction. To understand this context, it is essential to explore the pre-Islamic Arabian Peninsula, the environment in which Islam emerged, and the broader historical and cultural factors that influenced early Islamic dietary laws. Before the advent of Islam, the Arabian Peninsula was inhabited by various tribes with diverse customs and beliefs. These tribes practiced a form of polytheism, worshiping multiple deities and engaging in rituals that often included animal sacrifices. The dietary habits of these tribes were shaped by their environment, which was predominantly arid and harsh. Livestock such as camels, sheep, and goats were essential for survival, providing meat, milk, and other resources. The pig, however, was not commonly raised in this region due to the scarcity of water and suitable fodder, making it an impractical animal for the nomadic and semi-nomadic lifestyles of the Arabian tribes. The lack of widespread pig farming in pre-Islamic Arabia is a significant factor in understanding the Islamic prohibition of pork. In regions where pigs were more commonly raised, such as parts of Europe and Asia, dietary practices included pork consumption. However, in the Arabian context, the environmental constraints made pork less accessible and less significant in the local diet. This background helps explain why the prohibition of pork in Islam was not just a continuation of existing practices, but also a reinforcement of dietary norms that were already partially in place due to ecological factors. In addition to environmental considerations, health concerns also played a role in shaping dietary laws. In ancient times, the preservation of food was a significant challenge, particularly in hot climates like the Arabian Peninsula. Pork, being prone to spoilage and contamination, posed a higher risk of foodborne illnesses compared to other meats. Trichinosis, a parasitic disease caused by consuming undercooked or contaminated pork, was a known health risk. The prohibition of pork can thus be seen as a preventive measure aimed at protecting the health and well-being of the community. The pre-Islamic Arabian tribes also had specific taboos and dietary restrictions influenced by their religious beliefs and cultural practices. For example, certain tribes avoided the consumption of particular animals due to their associations with deities or spiritual beliefs. The pig, often viewed as an impure or unclean animal in various ancient cultures, was likely subjected to similar taboos. These pre-existing cultural attitudes towards the pig would have made the Islamic prohibition more acceptable and understandable to early converts to Islam. The broader historical context of the ancient Near East also provides important insights. Dietary restrictions and food taboos were common in many ancient civilizations, often linked to religious and ritualistic practices. The Hebrew Bible, for instance, contains detailed dietary laws in the book of Leviticus, which includes the prohibition of pork for the Israelites. These laws were part of a broader system of purity and holiness that distinguished the Israelites from other peoples. The Islamic prohibition of pork shares similarities with these earlier Jewish dietary laws, reflecting a common concern for purity and obedience to divine commandments. When the Prophet Muhammad began receiving revelations in the early 7th century CE, he sought to reform and unify the disparate tribes of Arabia under the banner of monotheism. The dietary laws revealed in the Quran, including the prohibition of pork, were part of a comprehensive legal and ethical system designed to foster community cohesion, spiritual purity, and obedience to God's will. By establishing clear guidelines on what was permissible, halal, and forbidden, haram, Islam provided a framework for Muslims to maintain their religious identity and moral integrity. The historical context of the early Muslim community further underscores the significance of these dietary laws. The nascent Muslim community faced numerous challenges, including opposition from the Quraysh tribe of Mecca and other Arabian tribes who were deeply rooted in their polytheistic traditions. The establishment of distinct dietary laws, such as the prohibition of pork, served to differentiate Muslims from their non-Muslim counterparts, reinforcing a sense of communal identity and shared religious practice. Moreover, the prohibition of pork in Islam can be seen as part of a broader effort to promote ethical treatment of animals and responsible consumption. Islamic dietary laws emphasize the importance of humane slaughtering practices, cleanliness, and gratitude for God's provisions. These principles reflect a holistic approach to food consumption that encompasses physical health, spiritual well-being, and ethical conduct. The historical evolution of Islamic dietary laws also illustrates the adaptability and resilience of these practices. As Islam spread beyond the Arabian Peninsula into diverse regions such as Persia, Africa, and Southeast Asia, the core dietary principles, including the prohibition of pork, were maintained. This consistency across different cultural and geographical contexts highlights the enduring significance of these laws within the Islamic faith. The prohibition of pork in Islam is not only grounded in religious and historical contexts, but also in significant health considerations. Examining these health implications provides a deeper understanding of the rationale behind this dietary restriction, highlighting its relevance and importance for the well-being of individuals and communities. One of the primary health concerns associated with pork consumption is the risk of parasitic infections. Trichinosis, also known as trichinosis, is a disease caused by eating raw or undercooked meat infected with the larvae of a species of roundworm called trichinella. Pigs are particularly susceptible to this parasite, which can lead to severe illness in humans. Symptoms of trichinosis include abdominal pain, diarrhea, fever, muscle pain, and swelling around the eyes. In severe cases, the infection can lead to complications affecting the heart and central nervous system, which can be fatal. The risk of trichinosis underscores the importance of proper food handling and cooking practices, which were not as well developed or understood in ancient times as they are today. Therefore, the prohibition of pork in Islam can be seen as a preventative measure to protect the health of the community. Another health risk associated with pork consumption is the transmission of other zoonotic diseases that can be transmitted from animals to humans. Pigs are known to be carriers of several pathogens that can cause illness in humans. These include bacteria such as Salmonella, E. coli, and Listeria, which can lead to foodborne illnesses characterized by symptoms like vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal cramps, and fever. These bacteria can be present in the pig's intestines and can contaminate the meat during slaughter and processing. In environments where hygiene and food safety standards are not rigorously maintained, the risk of contamination and subsequent illness is significantly increased. Moreover, pigs can harbor viruses that pose a threat to human health. For example, the H1N1 influenza virus, commonly known as swine flu, can spread from pigs to humans, leading to outbreaks of respiratory illness. While modern medical practices and disease surveillance have improved the management and prevention of such outbreaks, these risks highlight the ongoing public health concerns associated with pork consumption. Beyond infectious diseases, there are additional health concerns related to the nutritional composition of pork. Pork is high in saturated fats, which have been linked to various chronic health conditions, including cardiovascular disease, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. High intake of saturated fats can lead to the accumulation of cholesterol in the arteries, increasing the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Given the increasing prevalence of these conditions in modern societies, the dietary restriction of pork can contribute to healthier eating habits and better overall health outcomes. Furthermore, pork contains high levels of certain bioactive compounds, such as purines, which can lead to the development of gout, a type of arthritis characterized by severe pain, redness, and tenderness in the joints. Gout occurs when there is a buildup of uric acid in the blood, leading to the formation of sharp, needle-like crystals in joints and surrounding tissues. By avoiding pork, individuals can reduce their intake of purines and potentially lower their risk of developing gout. In addition to these specific health risks, the Islamic prohibition of pork aligns with broader principles of hygiene and cleanliness. Islam places a strong emphasis on purity, not only in spiritual terms but also in physical health and cleanliness. The consumption of pork, which is considered impure, is seen as contradictory to these principles. This perspective is reflected in the Quranic verses that describe pork as rijs, impure, and warn against its consumption. By adhering to this prohibition, Muslims maintain a lifestyle that promotes both physical and spiritual well-being. It is also important to consider the historical context of health practices at the time when Islamic dietary laws were revealed. In the 7th century CE, the understanding of disease transmission and the importance of food safety were limited. The prohibition of pork, along with other dietary laws in Islam, provided a framework for reducing the risk of illness in a time when medical knowledge and practices were not as advanced. This preventive approach to health reflects the wisdom and foresight embedded in Islamic teachings. Modern scientific research has further validated some of the health concerns associated with pork consumption. Studies have shown that pork can be a source of antibiotic-resistant bacteria due to the use of antibiotics in pig farming. This poses a significant public health risk, as infections caused by these resistant bacteria can be difficult to treat and may require more potent and costly medications. The issue of antibiotic resistance is a growing global concern, and reducing the consumption of pork can be part of a broader strategy to mitigate this risk. The prohibition of pork in Islam is not merely a dietary rule. It encompasses a broader spectrum of ethical and spiritual dimensions that are deeply interwoven into the fabric of Islamic teachings. These dimensions highlight the holistic nature of Islam, which seeks to harmonize the physical, moral, and spiritual aspects of human life. At the core of the prohibition is the concept of tahara, or purity. In Islam, purity is not limited to physical cleanliness, but extends to spiritual and moral purity. The consumption of pork is seen as incompatible with maintaining this state of purity. The Quran explicitly refers to pork as rijs, meaning impure or abominable, underscoring the belief that consuming pork defiles the body and soul. This notion of purity is fundamental in Islam, affecting various aspects of a Muslim's life, from dietary habits to acts of worship. Maintaining purity is essential for performing religious duties, such as the daily prayers, and for cultivating a closer relationship with Allah. The ethical treatment of animals is another significant aspect of the prohibition against pork. Islam teaches that all living beings are created by Allah and deserve respect and compassionate treatment. This principle is reflected in the rules of halal slaughter, which require animals to be treated humanely and killed in a manner that minimizes suffering. The emphasis on ethical treatment extends to the conditions in which animals are raised. Pigs are often associated with unclean living conditions and unhealthy feeding practices, which go against the Islamic principles of cleanliness and ethical animal husbandry. By prohibiting the consumption of pork, Islam upholds the importance of treating animals with dignity and ensuring that the food consumed by Muslims is produced ethically. Spiritual discipline and self-control are also integral to the prohibition of pork. Islam places great emphasis on developing self-discipline and the ability to control one's desires. The dietary laws, including the prohibition of pork, serve as a means to cultivate these qualities. By abstaining from certain foods, Muslims practice restraint and reinforce their commitment to obeying divine commandments. This self-discipline is seen as a form of worship, as it demonstrates a believer's devotion and submission to the will of Allah. The act of refraining from forbidden foods, despite their potential appeal, strengthens a Muslim's moral character and spiritual resolve. The prohibition of pork is also linked to the broader concept of halal and haram, which encompasses all aspects of a Muslim's life. Halal refers to what is permissible, while haram refers to what is forbidden. This binary classification system is designed to guide Muslims in living a life that is pleasing to Allah. The dietary laws are an important part of this system, providing clear guidelines on what can and cannot be consumed. By adhering to these guidelines, Muslims ensure that their actions align with Islamic principles and contribute to their overall spiritual well-being. The clear demarcation between halal and haram helps Muslims navigate their daily lives with a sense of purpose and direction, knowing that their choices reflect their faith. Moreover, the prohibition of pork in Islam fosters a sense of community and shared identity among Muslims. Dietary laws play a crucial role in defining cultural and religious boundaries, and the prohibition of pork serves as a unifying factor for Muslims around the world. By following the same dietary restrictions, Muslims reinforce their collective identity and express their solidarity with the global Muslim community. This shared practice creates a sense of belonging and mutual support, strengthening the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood within the Ummah, the global Muslim community. The ethical dimension of the prohibition of pork also extends to the broader societal context. Islam promotes a just and equitable society where the well-being of individuals and communities is prioritized. The dietary laws, including the prohibition of pork, contribute to this vision by encouraging practices that are beneficial for both personal health and societal harmony. By avoiding foods that are considered impure or harmful, Muslims not only protect their own health, but also contribute to the overall health of the community. This collective approach to well-being reflects the interconnectedness of individual and societal welfare in Islamic teachings. The prohibition of pork also has implications for environmental stewardship, which is an important aspect of Islamic ethics. Islam teaches that humans are stewards of the earth, responsible for protecting and preserving the natural environment. The practices associated with pig farming, such as the pollution of water sources and the degradation of land, are often viewed as environmentally harmful. By prohibiting pork, Islam encourages Muslims to adopt practices that are more sustainable and environmentally friendly. This aligns with the broader Islamic principles of caring for creation and ensuring that natural resources are used responsibly and ethically. In addition to these ethical considerations, the prohibition of pork in Islam has profound spiritual implications. The act of following dietary laws is seen as an expression of obedience to Allah and a means of drawing closer to Him. The Quran and Hadith repeatedly emphasize the importance of following divine commandments as a way to attain spiritual purity and divine favor. By adhering to the prohibition of pork, Muslims demonstrate their commitment to living a life that is in accordance with Allah's will. This obedience is not only a form of worship, but also a way to cultivate a deeper spiritual connection with the Creator. The spiritual significance of the prohibition is further highlighted during the holy month of Ramadan, when Muslims fast from dawn until sunset. During this period, the focus on dietary restrictions is intensified, and the act of abstaining from food and drink is elevated to a form of profound spiritual discipline. The principles of purity, self-control, and obedience that underpin the prohibition of pork are deeply intertwined with the spiritual practices of Ramadan. This sacred time serves as a reminder of the importance of adhering to dietary laws as part of a broader spiritual journey. In conclusion, the prohibition of pork in Islam is a multifaceted directive that encompasses ethical, spiritual, and societal dimensions. It reflects the holistic nature of Islamic teachings, which seek to harmonize the physical, moral, and spiritual aspects of human life. By understanding these dimensions, we gain a deeper appreciation for the wisdom and significance of this prohibition, recognizing it as a comprehensive guideline that promotes purity, ethical behavior, self-discipline, community cohesion, environmental stewardship, and spiritual well-being. Understanding the prohibition of pork in Islam is enriched by exploring how other religious traditions approach dietary laws and the consumption of pork. This comparative perspective not only highlights commonalities and differences, but also provides a broader context for appreciating the Islamic stance on this issue. Examining Jewish, Christian, and Hindu dietary practices, as well as other ancient and contemporary traditions, reveals a tapestry of beliefs and practices that have shaped human dietary choices over millennia. In Judaism, the prohibition of pork is one of the most well-known dietary restrictions and is part of a comprehensive set of dietary laws known as kashrut. The Torah, the central reference of Jewish law, explicitly forbids the consumption of pork. In Leviticus 11:7-8 it states, "And the swine, though it has a divided hoof, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Similar prohibitions are found in Deuteronomy 14:8. These verses categorize the pig as an impure animal and thus unfit for consumption. The rationale behind these dietary laws is rooted in the concept of holiness and purity. By following these laws, Jews maintain a distinct identity and adhere to the commandments given by God. The Jewish dietary laws are part of a broader system of mitzvot, commandments, that guide daily life and religious practice. The meticulous observance of kashrut, including the prohibition of pork, serves to sanctify the act of eating and elevate it to a spiritual practice. This approach mirrors the Islamic emphasis on purity and obedience to divine commandments. Both religions view dietary laws as integral to maintaining spiritual and communal integrity. Christianity's approach to dietary laws, including the consumption of pork, differs significantly from that of Judaism and Islam. In the New Testament, there is a marked shift from the stringent dietary laws of the Old Testament. This shift is largely attributed to the teachings of Jesus Christ and the Apostle Paul. In the Gospel of Mark 7:18-19, Jesus is quoted as saying, "Are you so dull? Don't you see that nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them? For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach, and then out of the body." This passage is often interpreted to mean that dietary restrictions are no longer necessary for spiritual purity. Similarly, in the Acts of the Apostles 10:9-16, Peter has a vision in which he sees a variety of animals, including those considered unclean, and hears a voice telling him to kill and eat. When Peter protests, the voice responds, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This vision is taken as a divine revelation that the old dietary laws are abrogated for Christians. As a result, most Christian denominations do not observe the dietary restrictions found in Judaism, including the prohibition of pork. However, it is important to note that some Christian sects, such as Seventh-day Adventists, maintain dietary practices that include avoiding pork. They base their dietary guidelines on the Old Testament laws and emphasize health and well-being as part of their religious observance. This variation within Christianity illustrates the diversity of interpretations and practices regarding dietary laws. Hinduism, another major world religion, offers a different perspective on dietary practices. While Hindu dietary laws do not specifically forbid the consumption of pork, broader principles of ahimsa, nonviolence, and vegetarianism that influence dietary choices. Many Hindus adhere to the vegetarian diet as an expression of ahimsa, avoiding meat to minimize harm to living beings. The cow holds a sacred status in Hinduism, leading to a prohibition on beef, but pork is not universally forbidden. However, cultural and regional practices vary, and some Hindu communities may avoid pork due to local customs or health concerns. The concept of purity and pollution is also significant in Hindu dietary practice. Foods are categorized based on their perceived impact on spiritual and physical health, with sattvic, pure foods being preferred for their beneficial effects. Rajasic, stimulating, and tamasic, impure foods are often avoided or consumed in moderation. This categorization reflects a holistic approach to diet that considers the moral and spiritual implications of food choices. In Buddhism, dietary practices are influenced by the principle of ahimsa and the monastic code of conduct known as the Vinaya. While the consumption of pork is not explicitly forbidden for lay Buddhists, many choose a vegetarian or vegan diet to align with the principle of non-harm. Monastic communities may follow stricter dietary rules, including abstaining from meat, depending on their tradition and interpretation of the Vinaya. The emphasis in Buddhism is on mindful eating and the ethical implications of food choices rather than specific prohibitions. Other ancient traditions also had specific dietary laws. For example, the Zoroastrians of ancient Persia had dietary restrictions that included avoiding certain meats and foods considered impure. These dietary laws were part of a broader system of purity that influenced many aspects of daily life. Similarly, ancient Egyptians and Mesopotamians had dietary practices shaped by religious and cultural beliefs, which included various food taboos. In contemporary society, dietary laws and practices continue to evolve and adapt. In regions where multiple religious communities coexist, dietary restrictions like the prohibition of pork can influence social and economic interactions. For example, the global halal and kosher food industries cater to the dietary needs of Muslim and Jewish communities, respectively, providing products that comply with their religious laws. These industries highlight the ongoing relevance of dietary restrictions and the importance of respecting diverse dietary practices in a multicultural world. Comparative analysis of dietary laws across different religions reveals both common themes and distinct differences. Common themes include the emphasis on purity, obedience to divine commandments, and the ethical treatment of animals. Differences arise from the specific religious teachings, historical contexts, and cultural influences that shape each tradition's approach to dietary practices. In Islam, the prohibition of pork is part of a comprehensive system of dietary laws that serve to maintain physical and spiritual purity, promote ethical behavior, and reinforce communal identity. This prohibition is rooted in the Quran and Hadith and is supported by a holistic understanding of health, ethics, and spirituality. By examining similar dietary laws in other religious traditions, we gain a deeper appreciation for the universal human concerns that these laws address and the diverse ways in which different cultures and religions respond to these concerns. The modern relevance and observance of the prohibition against pork in contemporary Muslim societies are essential to understand how ancient religious laws continue to influence daily life. In a rapidly globalizing world, Muslims face new challenges and opportunities in adhering to their dietary restrictions. This chapter explores how the prohibition of pork is maintained and practiced today, the role of halal certification, the global market for halal products, and the cultural and social implications of this dietary law. The adherence to the prohibition of pork in contemporary Muslim societies is evident in various aspects of daily life. In predominantly Muslim countries, such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Indonesia, pork is rarely found in markets and restaurants, reflecting the societal norm of avoiding pork consumption. The absence of pork in these societies underscores the integration of religious dietary laws into cultural and social practices. In these countries, the food industry is heavily regulated to ensure compliance with Islamic dietary laws, and pork and its derivatives are strictly prohibited. In countries with significant Muslim minorities, such as India, the United States, and France, Muslims navigate a different landscape. Here they must often rely on community networks, local halal butchers, and specialty stores to obtain halal-certified products. The availability of halal food varies significantly depending on the region and the size of the Muslim population. In urban areas with large Muslim communities, halal food is more accessible, while in rural or less diverse areas, Muslims may face challenges in finding suitable products. Despite these challenges, many Muslims remain committed to observing the prohibition of pork, often going to great lengths to ensure their food is halal. The rise of globalization and the movement of people across borders have led to the establishment of halal certification bodies worldwide. These organizations play a crucial role in ensuring that food products meet the stringent requirements of Islamic dietary laws. Halal certification involves a rigorous process of inspection and approval, from the sourcing of raw materials to the production and distribution of the final product. Certifying bodies, such as the Islamic Food and Nutrition Council of America, IFANCA, the Halal Food Authority, HFA in the UK, and the Indonesian Council of Ulama, MUI, have set standards that food producers must adhere to in order to obtain halal certification. The global halal market has expanded significantly in recent years, driven by the increasing demand for halal products among Muslim consumers. This market encompasses not only food and beverages, but also cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, and personal care products. The halal food market alone is projected to reach billions of dollars, reflecting its growing economic importance. Major international food companies, such as Nestlé, Unilever, and KFC, have recognized this potential and offer halal-certified products to cater to Muslim consumers. This expansion has made it easier for Muslims worldwide to adhere to their dietary laws, even in non-Muslim majority countries. The proliferation of halal products and certification has also led to greater awareness and accommodation of Muslim dietary needs in multicultural societies. In many Western countries, schools, hospitals, and workplaces now offer halal meal options to cater to their diverse populations. This inclusion reflects a broader trend towards recognizing and respecting religious and cultural diversity. For Muslims, having access to halal food in these settings is not only a matter of dietary compliance, but also a reaffirmation of their religious and cultural identity. However, the modern observance of the prohibition against pork is not without its challenges. The presence of pork derivatives in processed foods, such as gelatin, certain emulsifiers, and additives, poses a significant issue for Muslims striving to maintain a halal diet. These ingredients can be difficult to identify, as they are often listed under chemical or generic names. To address this, many Muslims rely on halal certification and guidance from knowledgeable religious authorities to navigate the complexities of modern food production. Another challenge is the rise of dining out and convenience foods in contemporary lifestyles. Fast food chains, restaurants, and ready-to-eat meals often dominate the food landscape, especially in urban areas. For Muslims, ensuring that these options are halal compliant requires vigilance and often limits their choices. However, the growing recognition of the halal market has led to an increase in halal-certified restaurants and fast food outlets, providing more options for Muslims who wish to dine out while adhering to their dietary restrictions. The cultural and social implications of the prohibition of pork are also significant. For many Muslims, adherence to halal dietary laws, including the prohibition of pork, is a way to maintain their religious and cultural identity in a diverse and often secular world. Observing these laws can strengthen community bonds, as shared dietary practices are a common aspect of communal life. Festivals, religious gatherings, and family meals often revolve around halal food, reinforcing the social and cultural significance of these practices. Moreover, the observance of halal dietary laws is a form of spiritual discipline that reinforces a Muslim's faith and commitment to Islamic principles. It is an act of obedience to divine commandments and a means of cultivating self-control and mindfulness. By consciously choosing halal foods and avoiding pork, Muslims engage in a daily practice that reaffirms their religious beliefs and strengthens their spiritual resolve. The impact of the prohibition of pork on interfaith and intercultural interactions is another important aspect. In multicultural societies, dietary practices can be a source of both understanding and misunderstanding. For example, social events and communal meals that do not accommodate halal dietary needs can create barriers for Muslims, making them feel excluded or marginalized. On the other hand, efforts to include halal options in such settings can foster inclusivity and mutual respect. Understanding and respecting dietary restrictions, such as the prohibition of pork, can enhance interfaith dialogue and promote harmonious coexistence in diverse communities. The role of education and awareness in maintaining the prohibition of pork cannot be overstated. Religious education, whether through formal schooling or community-based programs, plays a crucial role in teaching Muslims about the importance of halal dietary laws. Understanding the spiritual, ethical, and health-related reasons for these laws helps Muslims, especially the younger generation, to appreciate and adhere to them. In addition, public awareness campaigns and interfaith initiatives can help non-Muslims understand the significance of these practices, reducing misconceptions and fostering mutual respect. In conclusion, the modern relevance and observance of the prohibition against pork in contemporary Muslim societies are multifaceted, encompassing religious, cultural, social, and economic dimensions. Despite the challenges posed by globalization and modern lifestyles, Muslims remain committed to adhering to their dietary laws with the support of halal certification bodies, the global halal market, and inclusive practices in multicultural settings. The prohibition of pork is more than a dietary rule. It is a vital aspect of Islamic identity, spiritual discipline, and ethical living. Understanding its contemporary practice provides valuable insights into the dynamic and evolving nature of Muslim life in the 21st century.